There's a lot of political news to talk about, so we'll turn to our panel. We start with our own Julianna Goldman, just back from the big meeting of Democrats in Minneapolis. Jeffrey Goldberg is the national correspondent for The Atlantic. Ed O'Keefe covers politics for The Washington Post. And Mark Leibovich is the national correspondent for The New York Times. Julianna, I want to start with you, out with those Democrats. How would they receive this news about Hillary Clinton in Iowa?
Well, look, I think what you saw reflected in that poll and what you saw reflected in Minneapolis is this general lack of enthusiasm around the Democratic candidates right now. Democrats really want to fall in love again the way that they fell in love with Barack Obama. They say they really like Joe Biden if he got in. With Clinton, they say that, we'll get excited about her when we need to, when the time is right. But it almost feels like there's sort of this arranged marriage kind of situation here where they feel like they have to go with the person that's been picked with them, and that's Hillary Clinton.
Mark, the Washington Post has a headline that says, "A summer of Clinton stumbles gives way to an uncertain fall for Democrats." The last time you were here, you had written about Hillary Clinton's attempt to resell herself, introduce herself again. Right. It's now been a couple of weeks since that's happened. How's the repackaging going for her?
I would say slowly. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think if this, in fact, is the summer of Trump, I mean, I think what we're seeing is a juxtaposition between someone who is hyper-accessible, who is using the media, belittling the media at the same time, Donald Trump, and someone who is still perceived to be and still actually hiding in a really, really sustained way, which is Hillary Clinton.
And she is coming out of that hiding a little bit and taking on some of the Republicans. She's gone after Jeb Bush, who you spend a lot of time with, a few times. She even made a comparison between terrorists and the way they treat women with the way Republicans did. What do you think she's up to there?
I think she's trying to solidify the Democratic base and sort of remind them that she's willing to be that partisan warrior that they're seeking. It certainly rattled Republicans, and I think they're a little concerned that there was perhaps a little bit of a double standard this week about the way she was talking about them versus some of the things they've said about her in the past. But I saw that sort of as a sign of desperation, or at least an attempt to sort of temper down the idea that others are surging or that they're going to get in. This idea that she's focused on superdelegates. Remember this from 8 years ago. It just sort of reminds me of a student council race, because the idea that a certain percentage of superdelegates are telling her, yeah, we're with you. Well, that's like you telling your classmate you're going to vote for him when really you're going to go vote for the cute girl down the hall. I mean, it's just silly. It seems that
Mark, you are everyone's cute girl down the hall. This is the idea that Hillary Clinton would get commitments now. Forget all this other stuff's going, commitments now about how they would vote at the nomination.
Yeah, the idea that it's over when we're,
Well, and of course, delegates, superdelegates, that only matters if it's a really close race. Right. And so that's what is so alarming about these Iowa numbers. And even in Minneapolis, her campaign was asking delegates, asking DNC officials to sign these forms pledging support for next summer's convention. And they were saying, hey, sign it now. And you can come to private sessions with campaign advisors and even this private speech that Clinton gave the night before.
Jeffrey, what do you think? If you're Joe Biden, how are you reading this moment?
I think you wake up this morning and look. We have to put in a box in a kind of way. We don't understand the emotional state of mind with Joe Biden, with his family, because of the tragic loss of his son. So that we have no visibility into that. But Joe Biden, the politician, is looking at these numbers and saying, "Well, I should be president." I mean, clearly the Democratic Party, can't put Bernie Sanders up as the candidate in the general election. This is the way he would be thinking, I think. Hillary Clinton, people don't seem to like very much, so it's Joe Biden to the rescue one last time. And, if you're Joe Biden, you're at the top of American politics. You're there for a reason, because you take opportunities when they come. So it's a very interesting moment. He's going to have to make a decision very, very quickly, obviously. But I think that you're looking at this and you're seeing an opportunity.
Julian, was there a lot of buzz about Biden at the Democratic meeting in Minneapolis? Or
there certainly was buzz around him. He was dominating discussions. Look, I heard from someone who's close to his camp today. They say he's no closer to making a decision. The next few weeks are going to be critical. We'll be examining every move when he's really out very publicly on the Iran deal, when the Pope comes to visit. And even next week, we'll see him a little more politically active. He's going to be headlining a Senate fundraiser for Democrats.
Mark, if you're Hillary Clinton, are you more worried about Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden?
Right now I'm probably more worried about Bernie Sanders, because I think that he embodies a kind of populism that was somewhat similar to Barack Obama's, and the sort of falling in love aspect that Julianna talked about earlier. But I also am more worried about the fact that you're on Face the Nation and we're talking about superdelegates and Hillary Clinton lining up superdelegates. I mean, nothing screams entitled inevitability, looking way far ahead than they talk about superdelegates at this early stage.
And these numbers, though, are suggesting inevitability, not the case. Ed, there's a cliche in politics: your best day is the day before you announce. For Joe Biden, he's got to know that's the case too.
Absolutely, and it's telling. Last weekend he was meeting with a liberal lion, if you will, Elizabeth Warren. We're told yesterday he actually went to a Democratic event in Delaware to thank a bunch of state party activists for their work with his son. Now, was he also going perhaps to sort of check in with folks and see if they're with him? We don't know, but telling that he is still somewhat very discreetly, actively out there and talking to Democrats.
John, you're exactly right. You go from one day, you go beloved uncle, and the next day you're the target of huge attacks by Republicans and by Democrats.
Those numbers about Donald Trump in Iowa, they used to worry about Chris Christie, that he was too New Jersey for Iowa, and that his unfavorable ratings in Iowa are very high. But Donald Trump apparently is not too Queens for Iowa. His favorability ratings are quite high. He's ahead of 7 other Republicans. They really like him.
They do. I mean, he's 2 Queens for New Jersey, even. I mean, he is, what's interesting about Trump in this appeal is not so much what he is saying. I mean, what he's been saying is well documented, well covered, wall to wall. It's almost like every other candidate in the field juxtaposes themselves against him as an example. I mean, I hate to pick on your earlier guest, but Bobby Jindal in that earlier interview, I mean, he spoke in politician ease. He didn't really answer your questions. He had his sound bites, he had his hits. That's good for him. I'm sure his advisors are patting him on the back. I mean, he didn't, I don't think, move a lot of people, and that's not how usual human beings talk.
Julianna, you were noticing, though, there is a little bit in Donald Trump that's changed in the way he speaks now that he's the established frontrunner.
Well, that's right, and this is why other Republican candidates, they can't just assume that this was the summer of Trump and it's going to be the fall of somebody else. He has the money, he's the frontrunner, and he's also getting better on the stump. He's becoming a better candidate slowly, and even Republicans affiliated with other campaigns have noticed that and give him credit for that. So just this weekend when he said, look, this isn't about me. He's saying, I need your votes. You're seeing these little course corrections that show he's becoming a better candidate.
And because of that, you see all the other Republicans now saying, well, then treat him like us. I mean, Jeb Bush this week basically hectoring the press to say, if he's the front runner, you should be scrutinizing him the exact same way you've been scrutinizing me and my record. Look at what he says about immigration. Look at his business record. The fact that even reporters wouldn't stand up to him when he kicked Jorge Ramos out of a press conference. You would have done that at mine, is what he was implying. So it's clearly starting to resonate with the rest of the candidates.
The fascinating thing is that on one level, scrutiny doesn't matter because the more outrageous he gets, the more popular he becomes. I mean, so his ability to sort of articulate the inchoate resentments of a certain sector of the American electorate is uncanny, and so he seems to be immune to that level of scrutiny.
And he also just exposes the fake humility, the fake gentlemanliness that pervades politics in general, that people are very frustrated with. He also exposes frankly, the smallness and the irrelevance of the media while completely using the media to get his message out. And I mean, it's not like he's on the road all the time. I mean, he's just doing interviews, he's sitting up in New York. I mean, it's an amazing kind of, turn of just both using and dismissing at the same time.
Ed, do you think in Governor Bush's attempt to kind of push back, I mean, based on what we've been talking about the Trump appeal, is complaining about the press coverage going to do it for Jeb Bush?
Not necessarily, and he was doing it subtly, but as someone who's been following him around the country, I knew what he was trying to say. Look, there's no doubt that Bush has totally slid off the map. I mean, his numbers are down in Iowa, he's down nationally, he's into the single digits. I think in their most private moments, though, his advisors would say, well, we're in that field with Walker, with Cruz, with Rubio. That is our race. We're never going to necessarily get these Carson or Trump supporters. Maybe they'll come around eventually if we're the nominee. So they look at that sort of other category, the insiders, the people who've been doing this for a while, and they still remain somewhat confident that they can prevail. And remember, his super PAC, which still has the largest war chest currently in American politics, plans to start spending that money in the next 10 days in the early states. They believe that TV advertising might help them out.
Julianna, on immigration, there has been some conversation about Trump's immigration plan, but people like him and the other candidates haven't really taken him on it.
Well, look, all the Republicans knew that at some point immigration was going to be divisive for them. I don't think they realized that it was going to come this soon with Trump, and it was going to ratchet up those pressures. And so you've seen candidates try different ways of dealing with Trump. Jeb Bush sort of trying to take a longer term strategy and methodically pick apart him on the policy issues. So this week saying this isn't a conservative plan, but then that just earns the wrath of Trump. So it's figuring out, it's experimenting the best way to deal with him.
Mark, you know, all these candidates, when they campaign, they talk about being able to take on the challenges of the presidency. Come what may, they'll be ready to take on Putin at any crisis. Isn't Donald Trump a challenge of that order? And therefore, isn't this a test of all the other candidates in terms of their ability to handle unpredictable things, adapt, and present themselves? And is anybody meeting that new challenge?
Yes and no. I don't think a single candidate is meeting that challenge. I don't think they have any idea how to handle this. Jeb Bush's, what's almost more telling about Jeb Bush's sort of reaction to Donald Trump is how long it's taken him to engage and to really have any clue whatsoever on how to deal with this guy. And again, it's because the old rules don't apply, and the same consultants who have worked however many races before don't really have a playbook for this.
And Trump doesn't even have a nuclear weapon. Imagine if he did. I mean, these guys are failing the test with a guy like that. It's not a good sign.
Speaking of nuclear deals, and
that was my segue. That was my segue. Yeah.
And a little extra something will be in your pay packet. On the Iran deal, Ted Cruz, in an effort to find a strategy to deal with Trump, has locked arms with him. They're going to rally against this Iranian nuclear deal. Update us on where things are in the Senate and how such a rally might affect, if not at all, Congress's response to the
on the rally, it's very hard to imagine that the combination of Donald Trump and Ted Cruz will move wavering Democrats in any direction except away from Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. So it's more of a show than obviously a sort of vote.
The fish will be playing.
Right, a voting strategy. The win right now is that the president's back. He's going to see this through, I believe, if things remain as they are. And now the issue is, the White House would like to very much avoid having to use a veto. They're looking at filibustering options now. Most Democrats are bandwagoning onto the president's side. So I think the deal's come the middle of September. I think the deal is going to go through. Every single Republican is voting against it, but that's not enough to stop this.
Okay. All right. Last word to you, Jeffrey. Thank you to all of you. We'll be right back in a moment.